Okay, so for Victober, I've been reading my sort of set out Victorian books that I've picked at home from the actual book. But then, because I have to go through this massive Victorian cemetery 4 times a day to get my kid to and from school, I've also been listening to those books on LibriVox, you know, like the free app where like normal people read out books in the public domain. So I found nearly all of them. And at the minute I'm listening to A Study in Scarlet by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, like the first of the Sherlock Holmes books. And it's really good. Like, you think you might be a bit like Sherlock Holmes out. Do you know what I mean? Like, we all know like the stories back to front and like the idea of who Sherlock Holmes is and how he is and how his mate Watson is and everything. But I am really liking like getting it from the very beginning, you know, like the original source of the descriptions of him and his character and everything. Like, I'm just getting into the sort of mystery now of the guy who's been murdered and all this sort of stuff, because sort of the descriptions of the two guys took up most of what I've been reading so far, and it is really good. Like, I forgot that Watson is supposed to be this like military guy, do you know what I mean? And I do love that. Like, I love a good military guy, me. But anyway, I thought that I would give you some updates about where I am in each book and if I'm liking it or not, or whatever, while going through the cemetery several times a day this week. So it's a good backdrop for it. Anyway. Just like, I love looking at the graves and everything. This one looks like born 1876, died 1882, and it looks like maybe the child of someone. Like, how depressing. This one, Lydia, she was 19. This one, Gwendolyn, she was 14, looks like. And also Harry, who was 23. Like, my husband and I were talking about this recently, walking through here. Like, there's so many super young deaths, and they sort of like, you sort of look at them like from, you know, the Victorian era and sort of a bit after that and everything, and there are loads of them. And then obviously the ones that are closer to now, because they do have sort of modern burials here as well. The ones that are sort of closer to now, you know, you see it less often. We're like, sort of where, you know, where does it stop being so many young deaths? And it's really around the 40s with like the institution of the NHS sort of making healthcare available for everyone, and sort of easy healthcare and free healthcare. And it's sort of like, I don't know, a really stark sort of modern reminder, you know, from a Victorian age. I love how gorgeous tombstones are in this sort of time. If you think tombstones now, like, you know, they're lovely and peaceful, but they're not like this, are they? They're not like massive with like huge angels and statues and everything. So anyway, our guy, Sherlock Holmes, he is a consultant to the police for investigations. And he spends his time largely just sort of doing experiments and learning about various things to do with murder and crime, so that he can better deduce the sort of answers to all the things that come up for crimes. And he meets Watson. They're introduced by a friend, and they both need rooms to rent, so they decide to go in together on that. And Watson has just returned from Afghanistan, where he has been in the military and is now recuperating from war wounds, and he is a doctor. So he finds Sherlock Holmes particularly interesting. He is the narrator, because Sherlock Holmes seems to have like weird interests. So he like knows nothing about literature or anything like that, but knows loads of things about like blood spatters and stuff like that. So the police come to Sherlock Holmes and they're like, oh, we need you to help us do such and such, figure something out, a murder. And it turns out that the murdered guy is from Cleveland, Ohio. Like all this like super interesting like Victorian, you know, like British stuff. Just turns out that the guy that's murdered is from Cleveland. Anyway, we are there, waiting to figure out what deductions Sherlock Holmes can make from the crime scene and everything. Like he's already pissed loads of people off by telling them that their deductions were stupid. So it's interesting. Okay, I'm back. There's a brand new day. I have finished the Sherlock Holmes one and it was quite good. I sort of get, I think, annoyed with Victorian mysteries because everything sort of happens all at once. Like all of the information you need, you get sort of in long running monologues of people talking, you know? So in sort of modern mysteries, they go to somewhere and they get a bit of information from one person and then they go out to lunch and then they run into someone else who says something else, you know, and then something big and exciting happens and then they go and talk to someone else in light of the new information or whatever. Like it's sort of broken up a bit more. Whereas with this one, there was like a lot of just long, steady chatting about sort of quite serious information. I was like, am I supposed to be retaining all of this? Because I switched off quite a while ago. But other than that, I did really enjoy it. I quite like thinking about how Victorians would have like digested this, you know. I guess they do it in serials, you know, so you'd get sort of a chapter at a time in like a publication, like a magazine or whatever, and you'd just sort of be desperate to get the next one, you know, and every day that the paper came out it'd be like another like day for a present. Just a side note, I love this grave. This guy, he wasn't he didn't die in Victorian times, so I guess it doesn't count, but he lived out probably part of his life in Victorian times. He died in the First World War, and it says 10th Battalion, South Wales Borders, killed in action in the Great War, Neuve Chapelle in 1916. He was 23. I love that. I love how ornate it is. Anyway, I quite liked in the book as well that part of it was set in America. Like, I guess if you're trying to write something exotic and like dangerous and crazy, you know, for English Victorians or British Victorians, yeah, you know, what's more exotic than the American West and like vast desert and everything. But the author of this book, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, obviously did not care for Mormons much, and it's a bit uncomfortable how he has villainized them in this book. So that's a bit of something to think about if you're thinking of reading it. Okay, anyway, I have moved on now. I finished that one, it was good. I've moved on now to Wilkie Collins, who I love. And this one is the book that's new to me by an author that I love, so I haven't read The Haunted Hotel yet. And I'm sort of going with like a Halloween theme. Symmetry and such, so it works. And it's quite good, I'm quite liking it. So I don't think Wilkie Collins is for everybody because, like, I think for a modern reader, his like plots and characters and everything are a bit like cheesy and overdone and like sort of extreme. Like they're always like a bit the same, you know. All of his books are sort of similar and the setups are sort of similar, and like the villain is like always foreign and stuff like that. Always has like some sort of Mediterranean accent. But so with this one in particular, it starts off with a doctor, and he is being seen by a woman, a foreign woman, so you know that she's the villain straight off, because she fears that she's going crazy and she needs to speak to him urgently. Okay, like another sidetrack, sorry. This again is First World War, so not exactly Victorian, but the vast majority of the people who fought in this war would have been born Victorians, so I feel like that makes sense. But it's like a sort of monument to French sailors who died in the war. How cool is that? Anyway, this woman who thinks that she's going crazy, she says to him that she accidentally stole a woman's fiancé. She didn't know that he was engaged to her beforehand, and when she met the sort of spurned woman, the woman gave her a look that like made her fear for her soul or whatever. Very ominous, because it's Wilkie Collins. And then the doctor, he's like, okay, whatever, and then he goes off and he goes to his club, as Victorians do. And he asks around, he says, oh, do you know this person, do you know this person? Turns out she's the Countess Nerona. They're always a countess. And she's a very scandalous lady, and everyone has very scandalous and evil stories to tell about her. So that just sets us off right there. I'm excited. Okay, look at this one. this guy, Pascal, he was born in Switzerland. Died in Cardiff. He was 46. He died in 1891. We're back in our book now. The Countess Nerona and the man that was supposed to be the fiance of the lovely young woman who was spurned. He is a lord, by the way. They are on their honeymoon now after getting married, and they're in Venice, and some people are going missing and getting ill. Very strange. It's just a doomed traveling party, it seems. The maid of the lovely young woman, Agnes, who was supposed to get married and whose fiance was stolen, her maid is married to an Italian courier guy, and he was with the traveling party, and he has now gone missing. So Agnes has been forced to sort of put her hand in and get involved, and now we're introduced to a new character who is a lawyer, and I believe will be our detective for this evening, because he's trying to figure out what has happened to the Italian courier. Here, this one is in Welsh, which is really common in like some parts of Wales, but because this is Cardiff, it's not as common. Anyway, while we're speaking to the lawyer about the disappearance of the courier, that's when we find out that Lord What's-His-Face, the one who was supposed to marry the lovely young girl but ended up marrying the evil countess instead, he has died of bronchitis. Has he died of bronchitis? Or has he just been murdered? We don't know. But then the hotel is, or the palace that they're staying in Venice, that they rented out to live in, it's now going to be turned into a hotel, and people are like going over there and they're staying there, and this lovely young woman who was spurned by Lord What's-His-Face ends up staying at the hotel. Very strange. And people are having very strange experiences at the hotel. Strange smells, strange feelings, nightmares, people can't sleep. It's all very strange. Cemetery is very busy today, isn't it? It's a bit annoying. It sort of takes away from its mystique. What do you reckon? It's the caretaker's cat. Meow. Okay guys, this one, Will. So the death happened in 1917, also not Victorian, but he was 24, so he's officially Victorian. But look at this. Lost his life in the Halifax explosion, Nova Scotia, December 6th, 1917. I have had to Google that, and it is crazy. You should Google it right now. Anyway, I'm back, new day, and I have finished the Wilkie Collins Haunted Hotel book, and it was good. It ended a bit weird, definitely in a way I didn't expect, but I think it ended pretty good. Like, there's definitely some good dramatics, like swooning and such. I won't give it away. So then I moved on to, and have finished already because it's actually quite small, is The Canterville Ghost by Oscar Wilde. And I didn't really know what I was getting into with this one. I thought it would be scary, but it wasn't really scary. It was more sort of funny, and I think I should have known with Oscar Wilde that it would just be sort of like a witty sort of comedy instead of like a full-on sort of horror. But basically, it's this hotel in Britain, or this like this sort of house, this like a palace, and this American family is staying in it because like there's like a statesman, like a guy who's sort of a diplomat or whatever with the American government, staying in Britain with his family. And the house is haunted by a ghost who is absolutely terrifying. Loads of people have gone like fully deranged and disabled after like encountering this ghost. Like, one woman, the ghost put skeleton hands over her shoulder when she was just sort of doing her makeup, and it made her crazy. And like just loads of crazy stuff. Like, loads of people have been terrified by it. But the story itself is sort of like about like the differences between like Americans and Britons, and like sort of making fun of Americans and saying funny things about Americans the whole way through. So the Americans meet the ghost, you know, and like they're just completely unimpressed. They're like, no, this isn't like these rattling chains. We're gonna need to grease these chains. Like, it's just too loud. I'm sorry. Like, and when the maid is telling them about the ghost, the guy who's head of the family, he's like, oh, well, I come from a real country where if ghosts existed, we'd have one in a museum back home, or we'd have one in a traveling show, and sort of all this stuff. But basically it sort of ends up being sort of from the ghost's perspective about how hard he's finding it to scare the Americans and how it's really affecting his mental health. Like, sort of the Americans end up torturing him by not letting him sort of do his ghostly duty. But it was hilarious. I really liked it, really enjoyed that. It wasn't scary at all, but I still really liked that one. And I've moved on now to sort of a book of sort of Victorian ghost stories. It's like the Penguin Book of Ghost Stories or something. It has loads of different authors in it. And I've started on the first story now, which was going a bit slow at the beginning, but I think it's gotten better. It's by Elizabeth Gaskell. It's called The Nurse's Story. So it's like a nana, or like a nanny. She's really old, and she's telling the kids of her first charge about sort of this story, this scary sort of ghost story, about when their mother went missing. And she sort of is looking all over the house looking for her. She can't find her after she'd been made an orphan, and she's living like in a really sort of scary house, big, of like a distant relative. And sort of looks out the window looking for this kid, and she sees tiny little footprints heading off into the hills. She sort of runs outside, and like a dark figure sort of overshadows the path, but then it's gone in an instant, you know. And then she's terrified because it's so cold outside, and she's got to quickly run into the hills to find the child, and that's sort of where we are. But it's like, it's a bit eerie, it's a bit spooky. Like, not a lot has happened so far, and you know that the kid must be okay because she has kids. But I'm sort of liking it so far, so I'm hoping that that means that the other stories will be good as well. But yeah. Does anyone else find this one a bit terrifying? I feel like this is very frightening. So this one's all, good. Alderman of the city and everything. Delightful. The thing that gets me about ones like this is entrance to the vault. Okay, yes, yeah, okay. That's, yeah, terrifying. This one is for 2 kids, one aged 9 months and 11 days, and one aged 2 years. This one as well has 2 kids, one aged 9 months and one aged 10. These break my heart. I can't even imagine it. Okay, well, I think that's the end for this week's vlog. Week of reading. It's Friday now, so I might update a little bit later when I finish this one. I only have 2 books left in Victober, just the Ghost Stories book and also Shirley, which is like the group book, and I might update after those ones. But other than that, if anyone has any Victober updates to give me, any sort of hints about what you're reading, if you're liking it, if you've read any of the ones that I read, if you have any sort of recommendations for other things I might like based on those ones, please let me know. All comments are super welcome, and I shall see you soon.